Every week we chat to ex-players, supporters and invited guests here on Belmont Banter.
Welcome to the official podcast of Whitstable Town FC, whose main club sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited. Well, hi again everyone, and welcome to Belmont Banter. And this week we've got Josh Main. Now, Josh is one of the string of quartet of centre-backs that we have when Marc Seager got promotion to the Ryman League, and what a great time it was. You enjoyed it, didn't you, Josh?
Yes, I did. That was, I mean, my career, football career, probably the highlight. The Seags years at Whitstable were great, and great bunch of guys, great bunch of lads.
I love that, the Seags years. Very good. Right, can we start off with you, your first sort of memory of playing football?
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. I suppose my first memories of football generally were sort of following my dad around. He just played local pub football. I think he may have played for Whitstable and Herne Bay reserve teams. I'm not entirely sure. So I can remember being probably 3, 4, 5 those years, and going with my dad every weekend to some football ground here or some football ground there. And actually, I have a sort of a vivid memory of playing under the stanchions in a ground somewhere in Kent, I guess, with Sam Denley. And we must have been 5, 6 years old, and we was playing under the stands in a ground, and our dads were playing football. So yeah, so they're the early days, and I would follow my dad around and kick a ball around with friends in the park, and then at primary school, we had, my primary school in Swelcliffe, we had a Saturday football club. So every Saturday I would, my mum and dad had separated when I was 4 years old, 5 years old. But I lived with my mum. She hasn't got a clue about football. She was never really into football. I don't think she couldn't get, the idea of running around on a muddy park on a windy, wet weekend was not her idea of fun. So I would pack my little football bag every Saturday and go off to school, play my Saturday football at school, and it started from there really, Tone. That was dipping my toe in the water of competitive football really, although it wasn't a league. We went out on that Saturday to win, so fun.
That's a familiar story actually. This formative years and how we all go on that little short journey from school, from mates. And then all of a sudden the bug gets you and you take that next step. So when was the next step for you?
I first joined a team called Tyler Hill. My dad was playing for Billy Clark. I don't know if you know Billy Clark. He used to run Tyler Hill Football Club. Yeah. And they had an outfit on a Saturday and they had an outfit on a Sunday. So Dad played for both, I believe, Saturday team and Sunday team at that point. And so it was natural that I would join the kids team there, seeing as Dad spent time around the club anyway on a weekend. So I started playing for Tyler Hill. I was young. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. The first sort of age group you can start playing, and it was, I guess, I don't think it was a league format, but we played against other teams. But I was obviously a Swelcliffe lad, and Tyler Hill were based in Canterbury. So I was Swelcliffe, Tankerton, Whitstable, that area. And so it was natural that I would sort of want to gravitate to a Whitstable-based team where people I knew were playing. So I guess around 9 or 10, I joined Whitstable Town Football Club. And there was 2 teams. There was the A team, let's say, and the Colts team. And I remember being with the Colts in the beginning, but my friends were in the A team. So Sam Denley, obviously, I knew, and Darren Budge and Tom Gurr and all, Rob Thomas, I think was possibly there then. I'm not sure. It might have been a bit before his time. And I would go along with the Colts, and I didn't enjoy it because, with all due respect, they weren't they went and got smashed every week, 6-7-0. It was doing my nut in. So I think I begged to go along with the A team. But yeah, my mum wasn't involved, my dad really wasn't involved at that point, so I relied on the goodwill of other parents to pick me up and run me around, and of course you don't appreciate that when you're that sort of age. But now, being a parent myself, I look back on it and think wow, how kind, how kind of people to, they didn't have to come and pick me up on a Saturday, on a Wednesday and a Thursday, whatever day training was, whatever day the game was, and run me around. But they did it. So I'll be sort of eternally grateful to those people. Paul Gardner in particular was a name that I would sort of drop in that, without him, I probably wouldn't be playing football, because he would come and pick me up, run me to training because his son played. Phil Gardner was a goalie. Drop me home, pick me up on a weekend. He'd done all those things for me. So, and so, yeah, that was around the ages of 10. And then I was at Whitstable until, well, most of my youth. I played Whitstable until I think I was about 16. And then, like most of us have, I switched over to the Bay for a little bit, and then I came back. And but those years at Whitstable in the juniors, we were a decent side. We were, a few names I've already mentioned. Sam and Andy Martin was another one at that level, just banged in goals for fun, he did. And so we were a successful team over all of those years. We, seldom did we lose. Very rarely did we lose a game.
Who was the manager then? Was it Budge's dad?
So in the beginning we had Paul Gardner. I think Paul Gardner was the manager until we were under 15s, I think, and then I think Pete Budge took over.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling Budge had it, but he got fully involved in 18s.
Yes, oh yeah.
Then Pete was the gaffer at under 18s. So in that period, I actually went to Herne Bay. I get all my dates mixed up now, but I first went to, when did I first go to Herne Bay? I think I was a bit older, maybe I was about 19 actually. So yeah, I did under 16s and under 18s at Whitstable. Yeah. Under Pete, and we had good success. We were a decent little side. Most of the players were actually, most of us were the district side.
Yes.
So if you look at the district, which is, for people that don't know that are listening in, it's a selection of let's say the best kids from the schools throughout the district, and then you play other districts, and I guess it's a stepping stone up the ladder of the FA sort of football development. But you could probably take the district side, and it was the Whitstable Town side. So we were a good side. Yeah, it was great. Great time when you're a kid and you're playing with your mates. Real mates. We were friends outside of football as well as we were inside of football. So, couple that with winning, good times, really good times.
Yeah, the emotion of your involvement with local football in general, and then Whitstable Town, it just comes straight through. I can feel it in your voice.
Yeah, because again, it's not something you realise at the time, but when now as a grown man, as an adult, and you realise actually it's a community game, a community club. It means so much to the community. There's a real connection between wider community and then the nucleus of those people that are actually interacting in the club and making the club tick. And without those people, it wouldn't happen. And one example is the guy Paul that would take me and run me around, and done it for other people as well. But another equally important example could be, I think Debbie Budge and the Budges looked after the tee art, and someone was looking after the bar, and it's so it's important. I think it plays an important role in the community, and
very much so. Very much so. Tell me something. You're now living in Sweden. You've got 2 young boys, did you say? 2
young girls. Girls. I'm blessed.
You are, that's for sure. Are they interested in sport at all?
Well, they're young. My eldest daughter Florence is 3, and my youngest daughter is only 2.5.
Oh yeah, okay.
Actually, no, she's 2. She's not quite 2 yet. But Sweden's a really sporty country. Yeah. It's a really sporty country. They have very distinct seasons. Winter is winter. It's currently -10 here today. There's snow on the ground.
Yeah.
We can go skiing 20 minutes away if we want. We've got downhill skis close to us. We've also got cross country. We've got forest near us. But then they equally have great summers. a Swedish person would probably argue with that, but coming from England, they have decent summers, so they have the best of both worlds, and I think my kids are fortunate in that sense. And I'm sporty, my wife's sporty. We, it's on the TV. If it's not skiing, it's football. If it's not football, we've got rugby or cricket, or some of the bigger sports over here in Sweden are ice hockey and handball and things like that. So I'm sure they won't really have much of a choice because it's all around them. But they're too young to really understand competitive sport or even sport for fun. Really, they're not really that structured.
But it's nice to know that growing up, they've got a dad who's going to be committed to running them around. You're going to be doing the things that, you were so pleased about that happened to you.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important, especially if you're involved in a local community club like Whitstable. We have football clubs here that provide the same sort of value to the community. So I will, definitely be looking after my kids and running them around, and any of their friends or teammates that need help. I'm sure I'll be there, more than happy there to help them, and and just support generally the club. I think it's so important. I think, and not just a sense of community, but you learn a lot of lessons, a lot of life lessons, and it shapes good people, I think. So
you certainly learn about people when you're in a changing room, don't you?
You do, yeah. Sometimes you see more than you want to see and hear more than you want to hear, but I think it's all important lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we digress slightly, but it was a good thing to talk about you and your family and where you live and everything. Then we're at a stage in your football career where you're playing for the under-18s. I think you said you were 18 or 19. You had a little spell in Herne Bay. What happened next?
Yeah, so I first year of 18s, I picked up an injury. I think it was the end of the under-16 season going into the under-18s. So I actually missed the first year of under-18s, pretty much all through injury. And when I came back in the second year, I played a little bit of 18s. But Dave McFall, I don't know if you remember Dave McFall. He was the manager of the reserves at the time. I think this is probably, it must be around 2001. And so I ended up playing a lot of football for them instead of the under-18s, or as well as the under-18s, I should say. So I was up with a reserve. So at the age of 17, I was, playing reserve football with a load of men. And that was an eye-opener. It was a good learning experience for me, to be honest. It was, playing with mostly local Whitstable or Herne Bay lads, travelling around to different grounds, and great experience. I mean, characters, real characters. Dave McFall, what a character he is. Was, rest in peace, Dave.
Yeah.
So played a bit of reserve football under Dave, and then I think Simon took over. Simon Kay.
Yeah.
Played a bit of resi football with him. So yeah, I'm now sort of probably 18, nearly 19, and then I got a phone call from Jason Leppard over at Herne Bay, selling me the dream. You should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I'd been at Whitstable a long time, and I think Sam Denley had gone over to Herne Bay at that point as well. His old man was Nick Denley. His old man was managing the first team at the time. So Sam had gone over, but he was playing first team football. Sam, he was a good player, and I knew some of the boys over at the resis over there, and I went over. I decided to go over. So I had a bit of time with Jason at reserve level, and then when I was there, a guy called Jason Lillis came to the club as a new first team coach, and then I was in and around the first team squad. So I sort of made a bit of a transition, but I didn't really make a dent on the squad. I was a passenger really. They had some good centre halves. Lloydie was there, Wes Hammond was there, Dave Soughton was there, I was there. So they had 4 decent centre halves. I think I can include myself as a decent centre half. But the manager, Lillis, he just didn't fancy me. I think, I'll be honest, he, for whatever reason, he didn't fancy me. And I remember I was training well, and I was committed, and even though I had decent players in front of me, there was a game, and I can't remember who it was, and I think Lloydie was injured, Wes Hammond was injured, Souts was fit, I was fit, and I trained well, and Lillis had said, you're going to be starting on the weekend, so I was ready, and I turned up on game day, and he dropped me, and he played Wes Hammond instead, and it cut me deep, that did. And I thought, he just doesn't fancy me at all, this bloke. And that was me done with Herne Bay, and I thought, I tried everything. So at that point, I knew that I would cut my losses. I should cut my losses, and I think I gave Simon Kay a phone call and said, I want to come back over. And then I went back over. I came back over to Whitstable. I think it must have been the beginning of 2005, or around 2005. Then I came back and started back with Simon in the reserves. Had a season in the reses, and in that time, Seags took the first team job at Whitstable. So that's how. So I came back to Whitstable that way, and in that moment, Seags got into the first team, and I guess he was looking. I think people like Gary Sayer, who was a good player. I think Tom Parker, another decent player. I think they had already made the transition up into the first team, possibly, or they may have been in the reserves at the same time, and we may have all gone up around the same time together. I can't. My memory lets me down a bit, but after having that sort of season with Simon Kay, we had a good season. We were a good young side. It was a mix of my sort of age 18 group, and it was a mix of the year below, which was also a decent group, which, the likes of Jake Guest, Gary Sayer, Tom Parker, etc. I think we got to a cup final. We lost narrowly in the cup final that year as a reserve side. And then we went up together. We was training that pre-season. We was training with the first team as a big group, and I guess enough of us impressed upon Seags that he might have a half decent sort of crop of young lads, and the rest speaks for itself, really, in many ways, as a group of players, because we all know how it turned out. But so that's that the Herne Bay interlude between Whitstable as a youngster and coming back to Whitstable, as a still young. I mean, I was still probably 20, 21 when I came back.
Sure.
And cracked into the first team. But yeah, so that's the journey.
Tell me something. This has come up a couple of times. This particular team you're talking about, he had a knack somehow, Seags, of keeping. He had over 20 players on his squad easily, and he had a knack of keeping people happy. How did he do it?
He did. It's a good question. I've not thought about football for many years, really, or this part of my life for many years, and I knew I'd be coming on, so I've been racking my brain. And he was a good man manager, Seags. I mean, he was. I can only speak for myself, but he made me feel like the best player in the world. There weren't another centre half around that was as good as me. After me spending 10 minutes with Seags, that's how it was. And I'm sure it was the same for the other guys. I'm sure, there was me, Rob Thomas, Addy.
Yeah, Michael
good player.
Yeah, Michael Adcock.
Michael Adcock. What other centre halves did we have? Kiri was coming towards the end, I think. Yes. He was floating around, stalwart of the club, great player, great bloke. And he was sort of there to I guess, bring a bit of experience into the group of young centre halves. And then we had other players later on in that season, Jackson, who came over from, I don't know where he came from. He turned up one day, this bloke. He was, built like the proverbial outhouse. And what a character he was. He was all right. He was a half decent player as well. So, here's an example for you. I've been out injured. It was coming towards the, I think I'd had about 4 weeks out. I hadn't played, bad back, and I just couldn't get fit. It was a right mess. And we had the cup final coming up against, who was it we played in that cup final? I can't remember now. Was it Bierstead? I want to say Bierstead.
Yes.
We played at Dartford, didn't we?
Yes, Bierstead.
Yeah. And I hadn't played, and he called me up, and he and he said whatever he said, about, and he had a list of stats. So he was telling me how good I was essentially, but he was reading these stats to me. So when you play, we concede on average 0.5 a goal a game. When you don't play, we concede on average 1.5 a goal per game. When you play, we score X. When you don't play, we don't score X, etc., etc. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, yeah, they need me. I've got to get fit, and I'm sure. I mean, I don't know if those stats were true. Probably not. But I believed it, and that's all I needed to hear. He believed in me, and I would have run for a brick wall for him. And I'm sure you'll probably hear that story from all of us actually.
Yeah.
So he was good in how he managed this, and
he was totally committed, wasn't he?
Yeah, of course he was. Yeah, he had a I guess he had a vision, and he knew how he wanted to achieve it. And I think at that level, it's a decent level. It's a decent semi-pro level. There's good players in those leagues. Half of them, or more than half, have probably been attached to a club until they're 18, and the other lot should have been or could have been. So, there's some decent players. But I think one of the things.
Whitstable Town Football Club's main sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited.
I may be wrong, but I always had the impression it was quite amateurish until I met Seags in that way. All of a sudden, things, you felt a bit special, and you trained in a certain way, and there was always a plan, there was always a strategy, and there was always a goal. And all of a sudden, it felt like we was all really pulling in the same direction to achieve the same thing. And everyone knew their jobs, everyone knew exactly what they needed to do. And if you've done that on a given day, you'll win the game. Or certainly that's how I sort of interpret my time working with Seags or playing for Seags. And I think that, there's no more apparent example, although I'm going to contradict myself to a slight degree, but we played Margate in an FA Cup game, and they were 2 leagues above us, I believe. They were a Ryman Premier side, and I think they had not long come down from the Conference South even. They were a good side, they semi-professional in all, but certainly probably not in nature. They paid big money and they trained, multiple times a week. They were a well-organised outfit. But, on that day, he had them watched a few times. We trained with an idea of how we was going to play against people and system. And, on that day, we lost 2-1, but we lost 2-1 to a team that was 2 leagues above us. They should have beat us. But we went 1-0 up. They struggled. They really struggled to break us down. They couldn't cope with certain aspects of our play. And actually, that they scored a worldie to win that game. And I think anyone that was there that day, watches that game, and anyone that played that game knows that they got away with one Margate on that day. And that's testament, of course, to the players, but to the staff, to Seags and to Si. Si took all the training and implemented, I guess, broke the game down in a certain way that made it accessible for us players to sort of, assimilate and understand, and then, rebuild the puzzle on game day to make it work as a functioning team. But he was good. He was committed, and I think he was good manager. Good manager. Good manager.
So you obviously enjoyed your time under Seags. When that time came to an end, where did you go then?
Yeah, so we had that great season, didn't we? The was it 2006, 2007? We won the Kent League. We won a couple of trophies that year, Kent Reliance Cup or the Kent Senior Kent Reliance Trophy it was. Yeah. So we had a good run, and then we went up into the Ryman South, yes. I think, is it, or Ishman League? Maybe it's called now. I don't follow it. One of the same. Yeah. And for all of the things I've just said about Seags, he made a mistake, in my opinion, that year that we went up, in that he brought in a lot of players, a lot of players from outside the area, from different places, and I don't necessarily think they were better than what he had, and I don't necessarily think they were, the players that got him there, I think, earned a little bit more time to show what they could do at that level. We had already given Margate a run for their money, a couple of leagues above, and we were capable as a unit. And of course, I understand you need to bring in a couple of players, but he brought in a lot of players, and I think that unsettled a few people. It unsettled me a little bit, because I thought I was the man, and the way I play, with Rob Thomas or Addy, it was me and one of them usually. Very rare, very seldom did they two start together, because of the type of roles that we played as centre halves. I mean, both Addy and Rob could shift; they were quick, and I wasn't slow by any sense of the imagination. You can't be at that level, but they could shift. They were rapid, whereas I was an organizer. I organised. I was, at least my perception of I organised, and the defence would be, I'd keep us together as a unit, and I'd be always talking to the midfield guys, and I'd be shifting us around and reading the play. And I was, growing up, never particularly the quickest player, so I developed other strategies to sort of circumnavigate those weaknesses or perceived weaknesses in my game. So I believe I was always one step ahead in my mind. Always, I had to be, And then that season, when we went into pre-season, he brought a lot of players in, and a couple of lads came in from different clubs, and some of them were centre halves. And all of a sudden, I found myself right down the pecking order. I mean, and I thought, what the hell's going on here, And it done me a little bit. I must admit, at the time, it knocked me a bit, and I thought, well, I'm not having this. This is not right. My competitive nature, and my nature in general, is to not try and blame other people, but look at yourself. And so I do what I do, and I trained hard, and I got into the team. And actually, I had a look the other day, and the lineup for the first game of that season, we played Eastbourne, and I was in that starting lineup. But I just felt that I actually looked because I thought it was interesting thought, and I didn't want to misrepresent it. How our own memories can trick us over years or whatever. But there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players that started that first game against Eastbourne that played in the final against Bierstead. Only 5: Fewley, Rob Thomas, Tom Parker, Josh Main, Andy Constable. Bench was completely different. So Laney and Tommy Martin started in that final. They were both on the bench. So there's an example. So big changes, yes. And maybe there was too many changes, but it's neither here nor there. But now, when I look back on it, it doesn't matter. But at the time, I remember thinking, he's misjudged it. He's got it wrong, and maybe it was just me, Tone. I don't know. Maybe it's just how I feel, but possibly some of the other lads may have felt the same. Yeah. But yeah, so we had that season, and I was playing regularly, and it was a big jump, not in terms of standard, not in terms of the game, but in terms of what it actually required of you as an individual. Outside of football, the commitment that you need to make is a big one, actually. In terms of your time, we all had jobs, some of us girlfriends, wives, and you'd be training twice a week, and you might have a midweek game against Met Police or whoever it was, and you'd be leaving work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and getting home at 1 in the morning, and and it put a big burden on me, and then I picked up an injury. I think, I don't know, I can't remember how it happened, but I picked up a knee injury. I got absolutely clattered playing away somewhere right on my knee, and I went down like a sack of potatoes, and it was towards the end of the game, and I think it sort of coincided with the ref blowing his whistle to say the game was over, and we lost. I remember we had lost, and Seags weren't happy, and he called everyone over on the, to the side. He was really pissed off, and I was just laying there on the floor, and he'd forgotten about me, and I thought, it was another knife. It felt like another death by 1,000 cuts. I thought, it's another, and I don't know. Again, if I'm reading too much into it, but I just thought. So I was injured at my knee. I think I developed tendonitis in my knee, and then I thought it's all about. And me and the missus at the time, we were thinking about going traveling and doing all these other things. There's more to life than football, and so we did. So we quit our jobs and we went off traveling, and I that was the last time I played for Whitstable Town. I didn't finish that season. After Christmas that year, I was still injured, and got on a plane and flew out and ended up in India. And I'd done nearly, what did I do, 9 months traveling the world. Yeah, and so there was that. There's a sort of another interlude in the footballing journey. Is I took 8-9 months and traveled different parts of the world, India and Southeast Asia and South America and different places like that, which was great, an experience I would not change for the world. And I think when you do those things, you get a different perspective on life and what's important and what you want to do. And but then, so that was, what year was that? That was 2000. It must be 2000. Yeah, I left in January 2008, I think I left. And I got back end of 2008. And I actually, after I got back, I actually played more football. I played for Herne Bay for a little bit when I got back. Yeah. I don't know if maybe there's not much to tell about that story, but I got back and started working, and I moved up to London, and I lived up in London. I was working for a firm, and a lot of my clients were in and around London, so it made sense to be there. But I sort of, I wasn't really done with football. I thought, I had more to offer, and I could still play a little bit. I was still a young man. I was still, what was I, 24?
Yeah,
maybe 23 or 24. I wasn't no age really. And Simon Housey called me up. He was at Herne Bay. He was assistant at Herne Bay to a guy called Barry Morgan.
Yeah.
Morgo. Yeah, and he called me up, asked me what I was doing, and I explained, and I said I'm up in London and I can't, maybe I can't give that much, and he said, well, look, we've got a young side here, and I don't know if Si had a sense or a feeling that he may have had when we came through at Whitstable, but because they had a good bunch over at Herne Bay. They had a good bunch of youngsters coming through at the time. Stuart King, I think, was one of them. The Turner brothers, Danny Lawrence was a kid then, good player. So they had a good young side there. And he said, we just need a bit more experience. We've got a few more experienced lads coming in, but come over. And so I went down there and, trained and had a chat with Barry, and we ended up doing a deal, and I signed for them. And I don't know how long I wasn't there long. I think I gave it half a season, and it nothing to do with the people or the lads. It, nice club, great blokes. Si and Morgo were lovely. No issues there. The boys were great, but I just couldn't commit to it. And in a way, I was tricking myself because, that was that was in the Kent League, and so it was a couple of levels down from what we had been playing at Whitstable. And I didn't need to train so much to play that level. I felt very comfortable at that level, and I could sort of get away with maybe just going for a run by myself when I had time, just to keep me, my legs ticking over and get my heart rate up. But I didn't need to train so much to play that level. And in the beginning, I convinced myself that was okay. And I played half a season, but I realised that it wasn't fair on anyone. It wasn't fair on me, because while I could get by, I wasn't playing as good as I could do. So I was letting myself down, and I was probably letting the younger players down that were coming through, because it wasn't really the example that someone should be setting to them, you know, not turning up for training because, all right, legitimate reasons. I'm working in London, I'm living in London, but still, you know. And then, you know, and the third sort of reflection I had at the time was there was a couple of young centre halves there. One of them, Stephen Hansen, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But I sort of, even though I was only 24, I sort of put myself in their shoes and thought I'd have been really pissed off if there was a fella coming down or not coming down, but he was playing on Sunday, and it had happened to me before.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, it's not doing them any favours. So I knocked that on the head actually, and that was it. That was the last time. So at 24, you know, I think I was 24 then. No, 25, I sort of knocked it on the head and say retired, but I didn't, you know, I never played, you know, quote unquote proper football after that. That was me done with, you know, football in that sense. I played a little bit on a Sunday. I played for a Sunday side called Rising Sun, who also play a big role in the local community. I guess you know that, you know the name. Throughout my whole football life, I've always played my sort of adult football life. Let's say from the age of 18, I played for the Riser on a Sunday as well when I could. So that's also been a big part of my footballing life. And I continued to play for them for a little bit. But then I had an accident. I actually had an accident at work. I was working away. We was in Holland, and I had quite a severe accident. I was in a restaurant and I slipped over. A waitress, long story short, a waitress had dropped some drinks and she never cleaned them up. And I slipped over and there was a broken glass bottle, half of a glass bottle. And I slipped over. And naturally, you know, you put your arm out if you fall over. And I put my arm out. And as I landed, you know, I felt a big sort of thud on my arm. Didn't think much of it. But it turned out that half of a glass bottle would cut off and it went up into my palm of my hand and up into my wrist. And it ended up being a really nasty one. I didn't realize that immediately. I went, you know, I was taken to the hospital immediately because there was a lot of blood and stuff, and they had a look and they wasn't overly concerned, and they, you know, they stitched it up a little bit and they said, you know, you need to go back to the UK. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. So I called my boss, who was also there with me because it was a work function, and he arranged a flight for me. And he said, well, look, get a taxi straight to the airport. I'll meet you at the airport and your bags will be there when you get there. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. So I left the hospital, went straight to the airport. He was there with me. He was there with my bags. He had fixed my bags for me because we were going home the next day anyway. So everything was sort of all lined up to leave. And yeah, and he had booked me a flight. I was flying with BA, and I got through the security, and then I was just about to board we was in the holding pen, you know, and they let us through. I was just about to board the plane. So this is probably now like 3 hours later. So after the hospital, let's say, and they had stitched it up at the hospital. They put 4 stitches in it, and I was just about to board the plane, walking along the gangway, and I got a really sharp pain in my arm, and I bent over, and it just, the stitches just burst.
Oh my God!
All 4 stitches burst, and the blood just came shooting out of my wrist like water from a hose. It was, I mean, it was ridiculous. Of course, everyone ran away from me because no one wanted to get splattered in blood. And I, you know, of course, I was panicking. I didn't do. And a young fella, 21, 22, come running over, and he took his belt off and he made a tourniquet on my arm. And he put my arm up, and he took the tie off of a BA member, and he made another tourniquet on the wrist of my arm. So stopped the blood and called an ambulance, and I got rushed off to hospital. And I was 8 hours in an operation because I had severed 98% of my radial nerve. I'd severed 56% or 60% of my ulnar nerve, and I'd severed all of my arteries and some of my tendons in my wrist. So it was a bad one. And then, you know, I was in hospital there for a couple of days. I flew home. heavily medicated, of course. And then I started suffering again. And I was having problems literally like a couple of days after being home. And immediately I went to the hospital, and they sent me up to East Grinstead. And then I had a month in East Grinstead, and I had 2 more operations. And so I was sort of in the hospital for a month.
Wow.
Basically. A couple more operations, just absolutely medicated out my nut. And then I got sent home, and that was me done, really. I mean, absolutely, from that point on, I've not played football again. I've never played football since then.
Wow.
Because it just took a toll on me. The whole ordeal just
I can imagine.
Took a real toll on me physically, but also mentally, because the medication they give you, I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. That I think when I left the hospital, I was taking around 60 or 70 tablets a day to manage different things, because it's nerve damage. They can't treat it but morphine wouldn't do nothing, because it's a nerve problem, which, you have these chemical signals which turn into electrical signals. Yes. Chemical in your brain, electrical in your body, and the imbalance just so you have to treat the chemical in the mind to get on top of the nerve pain. And so they do that with antidepressants, and if you're not supposed to be on antidepressants, it can really play havoc with your mind. It's and so that's what happened. So I was heavily medicated. Eventually, over months and months and months, you get weaned off. But outside of that, the company that I was working for, and when it happened, I lost my job. I worked for an American company, and they didn't give a shit. I remember my mum sort of calling me saying, they've taken your motor, because I had a company car. They've taken your motor. They blocked my phone. Typical America. I think they thought I was going to sue them or something. But of course, I would never have done that. But so I ended up losing my job, which meant I lost my house. I had a house in Faversham. I was living in Faversham at this point. So then I had to move back in with my mum. I was told that I would never be able to use my hand again. So I had extensive rehab. It was a nightmare. And for a couple of years, it really affected me, both physically and mentally. I was, not in a good space. And it was at that time, so it was around that time I knocked football on the head completely, around when I had this accident, which I think was probably 2010, I think, around that time.
Sounds good, right?
And then during that moment, I also met my now wife, Linnea, who's Swedish. I met her, and and in 2012, like I say, I'd lost my job, and I thought we'll move to Sweden, and that's what happened. So then we came over here end of 2012, and it's been a great decision, to be honest. It's a different, culturally very different here, but I still haven't learned to live with all of the differences. It still drives me mad sometimes, but it's nice. It's nice.
That's fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what, you've really taken the wind out of my sails today. Because this journey that you've come on is not just all about football, it's about you as well, which has been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I think, of course, I was here to talk about my football journey, but I don't think you can't separate, life and football. I mean, they are one and the same things, and
absolutely.
And so it's important to give some context to the footballing journey.
It certainly has been. Well, we're a little bit subdued at the end of all that, because I feel quite emotional about it, what you've been through, but it's been terrific to talk to you again, Josh. I know we haven't spoken for 10, 15 years. So
long time. Yeah, it's been a long time, Tone. It's
just going back to you eulogising about all the players that you play with Seags and Si, and what a great time you had, and good time you had at Herne Bay as well. It's been a wonderful, wonderful chat with you today. So I thank you very much for coming on, because when this goes out, you will be staggered at the feedback you get, because you're talking about a time of your life that any friends that you've got now, in the last 10, 15 years, they don't know anything about that. And they're going to be really surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, you think you know the story. You know, your story's the truth, but actually, I've listened to nearly all of the podcasts since I found out I'd be coming on. I've listened, and you know, it's great hearing people's you know, perceptions of the reality that they lived through in their football journey, and it's nice to hear. You know, you learn a lot, and I hope people enjoy what I've spoke about with you, and I guess the feedback will confirm that or not. So
well, I don't care about the feedback. All I care about is the fact that you've been so honest and open with me, and I've really, really enjoyed it. So from me here at Belmont Banter and Josh in another country, in Sweden actually, it's goodbye for now, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Whitstable Town Football Club's main sponsor is Fibertech UK Limited. They are providers of optical fibre services to the telecoms industry, specialising in optical fibre provision, local and long haul. We offer a full turnkey solution to our clients throughout London and the south of England. Contact us through the website for more details.
Your host, Tony Rouse, every week on Belmont Banter, for news about local football in Kent and beyond.
I do hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of Belmont Banter. Don't forget there's a new episode out every week which comes out on a Sunday night, early Monday morning. And you can leave your suggestions for a guest to invite at the end. And leave a like, and don't forget to pass it on to all your mates. Cheers!